Just to give you like the devil yeah, this is also true. This is also true. Right. We get the seat before we
Try not to kick the camera.
I nearly went over it.
Can I ask, how are you doing the audio feed into that camera?
It's from the camera. So the camera's got something wrong with it. We don't know what it is. It's causing a buzzing sound. So we're flipping over to the laptop microphone for the next bit, which should sort it out.
Okay.
But we don't know why it's buzzing. There's no obvious reason for it. It started about 25 minutes into the...
Is that an SD card in there?
It does have SD cards in it, yeah. But it's not recording on it.
At the break.
Yeah. Jules, we'll try out.
Canon.
Yeah.
But you might want to try it.
We can flip it over. I'm running on this now.
I've got a tripod outside as well.
This one.
I was just thinking you could actually run both and see whether it actually works.
We can't. We're on that time.
Because you're live feeding. Yeah.
It's a live feed. Yeah.
Well, you can try flipping it, see whether it works.
Yeah, I'm fine with doing that.
Also, it's building actually shut up. Actually shut up.
10 o'clock tonight? No, it doesn't. It's 40 minutes.
See, this is the thing is, you get these helicopter parents and they get all worried about what's going on. Try and manage the phone.
Hi guys. Hi everyone. If you can take your seat. Only 20 minutes late. French time. Right, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, hello.
Hello, wonderful, thank you. Lovely, lots of chatter in the room, excellent, this is what we want, but thank you for coming back 20 minutes late, excellent. But I think a lot of this of the day is about people talking to each other, not just the session, so please do carry on doing what you're doing. Right, so I'm not going to do anything with this session apart from introducing our next chair of the whole session. If you want to come up, introduce yourself and take it all away. I was just trying to get everybody to come back and play.
Right. We're going to try with just the Wonder mic so that we're not standing up and sitting down because that'll take more time, right? So I'm Rachel Connor. I'm Director of Research Partnerships at JDRF in the UK. Thanks very much for having me. I'm jointly chairing this panel with Elizabeth Robertson from Diabetes UK, who's the Director of Research there. And so we're really just going to be facilitators here and let these good people, Anthony, Roman and Helen, do some talking later. But before we do that, both Elizabeth and I are going to take 2 minutes, maybe less, to say what our organisations are doing in the diabetes technology research space. Is that okay? Some nods, okay. Since I'm holding the microphone, shall I go first? I'm holding the microphone, I'll go first. JDRF has been involved in diabetes technology research for quite a long time. For over 10 years now, we've been quite influential in the artificial pancreas space. Yes, I know there are some problems with the phrase artificial pancreas, but bear with us. And we were one of the organisations that started the movement towards trying to make technology research in diabetes a bit more mainstream, bring people together. And one of the leading lights of that field is sitting in the middle here. So I won't say any more about that. What are we doing more recently? Well, it's not just about closed-loop technologies. We're investing in work that looks at some of the components. So can we get sensors smaller, better, more flexible, easier to insert? We're in that space. Pumps, can they get smaller? Can the things that work with pumps and sensors do better? So we're also investing in work around insulins. Can we get better, faster on, faster off insulins? Can we make more concentrated insulins? Would that help make pumps smaller? So it's not just about the headline tickets in technology research. And as you heard from our lovely representative from Roche this morning, we last autumn announced the Open Protocols Initiative to try and bring those conversations about how technology can be used in different ways, more flexibly, more how people with type 1 tell us that they want to use technology more easily. And can JDRF, with our role in this space, catalyse those conversations? What can we do to change that? And that's not just about interacting with academic investigators and hearing what people with type 1 want. That's about working with companies, but also with regulators as well. So I think I'm going to leave it there and pass over to Elizabeth.
Thanks, Rachel. So just very quickly from me, from Diabetes UK's perspective, it was really interesting this morning hearing from the companies and hearing about the developments that are ongoing. And I was just reflecting before I came here on the fact that Diabetes UK has been investing in technology really for probably the last 40 years. We did the first clinical trial, introducing the first insulin pen back in the 70s. We brought the first artificial pancreas to the UK, which apparently was the size of a filing cabinet. And more recently, we've been really privileged with JDRF to fund both Helen and Roman in some fantastic trials, trying to understand how closed-loop systems are beginning to benefit and impact on people. Looking to the future, one of the things we've done recently is set up for the first time diabetes clinical studies groups. And this is to bring people who are experts in all aspects of diabetes research, including technology, healthcare professionals, but critically people living with diabetes. And I know there's a number of you in the room today to come together to think about where are the gaps and what do we need to do to fill those gaps. So today is really important in helping us think about that. Finally, for me, I just wanted to ask you really, what do you think the role of charities is in this space? There's a huge amount of investment going in from our wonderful companies in new technology development. You know, what is our role in adding to that as we move into the future? You know, we represent you, you fund us, we're hearing all your concerns today, and also I think we're learning more about how the importance of understanding both the physical but also the mental side of interacting with technology as we move forward. So what is the space that we need to occupy and we need to push forward as we look into the future? And we really need you to help us through our clinical studies group work to think about where those gaps are that we can really bring partnership together to make a real difference in your space, to make sure that your life living with type 1 diabetes improves as we move forward and for future generations. So, will I start with the first question, then just pass the mic, and then if we can just ask people to identify themselves as we go through. So the first question we thought we'd kick off with is, could you each tell me how your work with technology at the moment is helping people with diabetes?
Thank you, Elizabeth. So my name's Helen Murphy. I work with Roman and with the clinical team in Cambridge. I work mainly with pregnancy. So I have a skewed view of the world. People are either pregnant or not pregnant, so I apologise if you're male and not pregnant. You know, to my mind, and I do acknowledge my bias, that pregnancy is like a unique opportunity to shape the health of the future generation. So I think that is a really important time in a woman's reproductive lifespan. It's really a good time whereby any small improvement in maternal health will have a absolute benefit for that mother and for her offspring. So I've been working with Diabetes UK and JUF for about a decade to actually make technology available mainly to women before and during pregnancy.
Thank you. I'm Roman Oworka. I work at Cambridge. I am privileged to be able to be in the space of diabetes technology IP for some time, being able to focus on that. I initially didn't think that this can help, but then looking what is really happening in real life, I realized this is the way forward. So I work on the research side across all ages, not just pregnancies, but also the little ones, adolescent children, adults. We got funding for those above 60, so we cover the whole range. And I think what we try to do is to bring the technology so it can demonstrate, we can demonstrate the benefits, so it can be available freely, if possible, to all those NHS and maybe even wider, and for the developing prototypes and the clinical studies.
Is it working? Hi, I'm Anthony Tasker. I'm a paediatrician. I work up in Scotland, in Kirkcaldy. I feel slightly imposter in front of these two guys, gods of sort of research and things. I've done limited research as a trainee on continuous glucose monitoring and about glucose variability. But now most time I'm a full-time clinician doing this as a consultant with paediatrics. In fact, we use technology. About 50% of our paediatric population are on pumps now. We use the Medtronic 640G mainly and Omnipod to give people, that's the choice that we give them. And we have people on using CGMS on a limited basis. But I can answer questions of those sort of experiences from a more clinical perspective.
Moving on to our next point of discussion is, I suppose, what we really want to tease out is what are the challenges that research still needs to answer, and what are the challenges actually in doing research that we should be focused on? What is the burning topic that we need to sort out to help make technology for type 1 diabetes real? And Anthony, coming to you first, obviously you're more at the clinical end, so what are the questions whilst you're working in the clinic that you need answers for research to deliver before things can change?
I think the difficulty with the sort of research at the moment is it's been very much focused on HbA1c targets and proving, does this bit of tech improve HbA1c? Because that's what the research is. And as all the guys know, it's more than that. It's about quality of life. It's how it improves your day-to-day living with the stress it causes. I mean, parents, I see in my clinic, who are up testing throughout the night because they're terrified of their child being hyper in the middle of the night, not waking up in the morning. And I think more needs to be done in sort of how we look at other things, not just markers of HbA1c, and people talk about time and targets, but I think there's also a lot of quality of life there as well. And I think we struggle with tech getting it approved and the money for it because people aren't used to approving tech. And I think, like I said, I think the Libre is an example of that. I think if it was a drug, if someone turned around and said this is a new drug for type 1 diabetes that shows improvement in quality of life, and in some people shows an improvement in HbA1c, and it costs £60 a month, it would have just been approved, and we wouldn't have all these problems that we're having in local areas getting it. Once it's got the sort of all the work by path over getting it approved, national, prescribable in the NHS, and now all of us in our areas trying to get it funded. When we go to the committees, if it was a drug, they would have just said yes. We wouldn't have the fights that we have now. So I think getting certain areas to recognise tech as being different, it's the only thing I think that's going to improve type 1 care. You're not getting new drugs. There's not a new incident that's really, it's tech that's going to make a difference to you guys. And it's about how we get that better approved and people recognise
it. So the question was what research needs to be done, I guess, to move this technology still forward. I thought it was sort of three areas which I'd like to focus. I think we have all the components. We can have commercial, we have artificial pancreas system. I think it's still possible to improve each component. And one of them could be the infusion set, which is the weaker part. It's not really recognized. But having said that, we can have an artificial commercial pancreas system right now. We don't need anything more. And we have the 670, which showed the example. Again, small size, we're getting from the feedback from people on the field, small size, variability is really important on the aspects. I think the other one is we still need the hard data for those people nice to show, hey, it works. It works on A1C, it has psychosocial aspects, it works in this population, in that population. I think this is what we're doing. We're doing clinical studies, randomized clinical trials. I don't need to sell it to you. You know how it benefits. But we need to sort of randomized controlled trials. People are randomized, and we evaluate them and we assess them. And as I said, this is really key to persuade NICE, an organization that's first technology to fund. So we're doing that aspect. I think the last part of the sort of research, which I would see is, let's assume we have the technology, and let's assume it's going to hit the real world. Do we think that the healthcare professional can distribute it and then use it and tell people how to use it appropriately? Again, I work with a number of clinical site research sites in the UK, and I would say some do, but many do not. So understanding how we could help healthcare professionals and these sites to get the best use of technology is something which I think will need to be done before we can benefit from this technology as widely as we can.
I might have forgotten the question, Rachel.
So I think the driver, because I think I've forgotten the question slightly too, is what still needs to be done? What research questions do we still need to answer, and which traditional research programs need to go ahead before we can see a change in how technology is used in type 1 diabetes?
So again, coming back to my own area, which is pregnancy, so the research, I think, for continuous glucose monitoring is loud and clear, giving women more information about their blood sugars, what during pregnancy helps them make better choices or different choices, and is associated with better blood sugar control, better outcomes for their babies. So I think what in our field we need to do is we work out which are the women who can benefit from continuous glucose monitoring and who might be candidates for an artificial pancreas. It does not mean that all women with type 1 diabetes would ever want to choose an artificial pancreas, but I think we should work out how we can tailor the various technological options to the right person at the right time, The other real issue in our field, and I think right across diabetes, is the clinic-to-clinic variation. So we've just highlighted what is utterly unacceptable clinic-to-clinic variation across the NHS. And for me, being able to automate some of that insulin delivery is our best chance on the near horizon of dealing with that unacceptable variation.
Thanks, Helen. So I think a final question before we open up to the floor is, I mentioned at the beginning, this is a fast-moving area, and you've got JDRF and Diabetes UK here. What is the role of charities from your perspective in this space? If we were to do something, what should it be?
Looks like there could be a very long wish list. I will keep it short. The things that make real change, I agree with Roman, there's individual components and having all of these things are important and behind the scenes, but the single one thing is to do it bigger, better and more collaboratively. So in cancer we have the grand challenge where everybody works together and does one very large concerted effort, and I think we get the right people around the table, we do one thing and do it really well. Yeah.
I think one of the key role of charities is lobbying. Lobbying for funding for this field. We're living where we need funding for research, and there are other areas which are promising lots of things, but not so delivering and not naming. And the other one is, I think the lobbying also focusing the voices of people and telling nice, another one, these technologies change people's lives. It's part of the quality of research, and quite often these reimbursements are based on A1Cs, but for the charities to be able to collect information, the feedback from community like here, and basically tell, hey, it might change A1C just a bit, but it will change people's and parents' lives. And being able to be used for the reimbursement, I think is very important.
I really just have to agree with both the comments. I think that the national research, having a big research trials are the way forward to have that. I mean, it's been shown in paediatric leukemic care where all children who are diagnosed with that get enrolled in the same trial, and the improvements they've made in care shows what can be achieved when you have one standard, bringing everyone together in a clinical trial. And also what you're saying about you guys trying to lobby the politicians and things, and the getting approval for technology. I think that's where you can add a lot of weight to, is from a lobbying perspective to help them.
So I think one key message to give you is that Elizabeth and I know each other quite well. We've worked together quite a lot, so there's absolutely no barrier to us working collaboratively. It's really interesting, the comparison to the cancer sector for how to make change. They're quite a bit better funded than we are. And so there are limitations to how much charities, even charities who are working around the world, as JDRF are, and Diabetes UK are doing fantastic work here in the UK. A big phase 3 clinical trial is a very expensive proposition. And I think we're both challenged in our organisations in, do we push forward lots of different things, because we're not only working on technology research, to try and get it to a point where other people can pick it up, or do we focus on doing those big totemic pieces of work? And I think where JDRF sees our role is setting up the case that these are things that are really worth trying. So we do a lot of proof of concept work, we do a lot of phase 1 and phase 2 trial work. By the time it gets to phase 3, we reckon we've proven a case well enough that other people should pick up that funding. And I kind of stand by that, actually. We should be on to the next thing, proving the case for the next thing at that point. But we have that role in bringing together the voices, your voices, these voices, and making that case to the people who could give us those bigger chunks of cash. and making sure they know it's important to direct that to type 1 diabetes. And you can all help us doing that. You know where our websites are. So I think that's probably the pre-planned questions gone through. So let's open the floor. Show of hands, any questions for us? I'm sorry, we have to go with the lovely girl in the pink and blue shirt here first, because she's directly in my eye line, but also, why not?
Thank you. I'm Lucy and I'm type 1 diabetic. And I would like to ask, how are you encouraging and what are you doing to encourage more technology such as CGMs and artificial pancreases? And from a diabetic's point of view, I know a big factor is confidence. Are you helping people be more confident in this tech? I think someone earlier mentioned that people would be more confident if it was a drug, for example. And how are you changing that?
Who's taking that question?
I'll start. I think that's a great question. I think confidence in technology is not something everybody has. Somebody your age is probably a lot more confident than older people, and I think we. So yeah, we need to educate. We need to help with information. I guess one of the things Diabetes UK does is we fund in the clinical champions, which are clinicians who we work really closely with, so that they can become more confident in this space and then sort of share that knowledge more widely. So I think there's ways of sort of helping people, but you're absolutely right. Technology is great, but getting people the confidence to use it and use it effectively for them as an individual, I think is really important.
And it's patients and also healthcare providers, right? Because again, with drugs to some regard, you get a prescription note and it's black box once it's been administered, it's generally gone. Whereas the technology generally there's a life cycle to using technology, and that involves having the healthcare providers having the skills to support throughout that life cycle.
And I think the other thing that I think that you all know is we're all individuals, we're all different, we all respond differently to technology as we age, apart from anything else. And we need to understand more about that through research as well, so we can not just give people confidence, but confidence to use and benefit from technology throughout their life.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll go before I go to the God that is Roman is one thing I would say to you, Lucy, one thing the charities do with very well, because in my view, one big thing for confidence, but as healthcare professional, and Anthony will hopefully agree as will Reza, is peer support. So as a healthcare professional, when I mingle with people who go like, actually that works, you go like, oh, okay, maybe it does work. And I think it's no different for people who live with diabetes as well. So I suspect that's what I think charities are very good at, from my experience. They do get people together. You've got events like this where you have that, and then we have another event in London. So that's a good forum where you build confidence. It's not just the studies. It's when you talk to somebody of your own age or somebody of the ilk who said, actually, these are the problems, but these are the good things. I think that's how confidence builds, if I'm very honest. So that's what charities are really good at as well. Rowan.
Not sure, Lucy, it's probably not confidence. I just want to say on our side, we focus on the research in pediatric population. And one of the reason is because there are, so far, those who will be living with type 1 diabetes for a long time. So we actually started our research in pediatric population before doing adult, which is very unusual. And any research mainly starts in adults. So for example, right now we're doing studies in those one year to 7-year-old. We have about 18 months children on a closed loop system. We have lots of research 6 to 18-year-old as well. We're doing study newly diagnosed. Those who within 10 days of diagnosis, they are recruited for study, and they will be using closed loop for 2 years, and the age 10 to 18-year-old. We engage healthcare professionals in this area. So again, it is the little one learning how to use closed loop, but also the healthcare professionals how to press the button, and some of them find more challenging than others. So we do focus on the pediatric. We do realize that's the population. I think we need to realize still 670G in the US was first approved the age 14 plus. Now I think it's going 6 to 17 right now in the US. So it is still always quite often the adult goes first. But we are trying to streamline, fast track, and it is challenging still to do that for repeated populations, but we are aiming to do so.
Okay, next.
Can I just pick up on that a little bit? And it is about not wanting at my stage of life to feel I'm being sidelined. I was diagnosed as a yeah. Thank you. I was diagnosed as a child, and I'm coming up now for 46 years of diagnosis. I self-fund CGM, and for me, the huge benefit I get from it is quality of life. I work full time. There are situations occasionally in my work life where I will have bolused for a meal. I haven't managed to eat it on time. I have people coming and interrupting me, and by watching my CGM, and I use X-Strip and a Pebble watch, I can see my blood sugar dropping. I've been able to treat it. I've avoided hypo symptoms and managed using sugar surfing to stay within range, not to have any of the awful symptoms that go with a crashing low, which I would detect, but not until I get all the symptoms. And so to hear that, I feel all populations are important. And so, yes, you want research done that will benefit children and pregnant women, but I also don't want to be forgotten, having lived with it for so long, that actually I can also benefit from an awful lot of the research that's being done. And so please don't forget all of us and think we need to focus on, the groups coming through.
We do have adult studies as well, and I think there is not really the age category. We have one study for 60 plus as well, especially. Yeah, as I said there is nobody here. Well, so we're not forgetting. It's I think it's interesting for the long-standing type 1 diabetes whether one needs to do things a little bit more differently because the residual insulin secretion is very low, etc. We're not forgetting.
I was just going to comment on the ageism as well that I was hearing from the platform. I apologise. I'm 54, I'm nearly 55, and my generation of people who have type 1 are surviving for longer. And there is a joke in the diabetes community which I'm not sure that you're aware of, which I'd like to share with you, which is that we joke that a cure for diabetes is 10 years away. Okay, 5, I'm optimistic today, good. So if it's 5 years ago, and when I was diagnosed in 1979, which is quite a long time ago, I was told that the cure for diabetes was 10 years away. And the other thing is there is very little evidence that older people can't get to grips with technology. So please, can we not have that type of thing going on in the conversation? Thank you.
Can you stand up for the younger generation?
Yeah, but I don't think it's not just ageism that I think plays into it. I think it's there are different groups who get left out. If you've got really good control, you get left out of stuff. So the focus that we want to do the people who've got really who are struggling with I'm going to say poor HbA1cs. That they get funding and reason to so there's discrimination wherever you go. Yes, if you're doing really well, you don't get rewarded for it. If you come to clinic and you've got amazing control, and someone says, "Well done," yes, you're not getting access to the latest bits. And we're aware of that. Also, from the research funding and other bits and points of view, though, in paediatrics, I'm blessed working with children and things like that, because when we're asking for money for things, people experience of certain research, whenever you're getting a drug approved or anything like that, part of the cost calculation is done on your benefit to society, your wealth, how much you're getting. And so for children, if you do something that extends their life or improves their health outcome, the cost benefit is much higher in that calculation. So it doesn't have to be quite so effective. So it's easier sometimes for us to get those things approved. That's politics.
I think, just before I take the next question, the thing to say is that there is also a lesson to learn here as well, because the NHS is learning it the slightly hard way. Because I don't know how many years ago we created a 2-tier system in diabetes. We created one for up to the age of 18, and then we said after 18, best of luck, crack on and see how it goes. So as a result of it, we know what funding does, because you see the outcomes in paediatrics have really improved, and they have done really well. What the adults have said, so whenever you had a debate, and Anthony knows, I went to a pediatric conference, and they said, we have all your psychologists, why don't you? I told, because they don't have any money. Not because they're not trying. So I think that's what we have learned, and right now the whole system is about, it doesn't matter what age you are. So when we debated about, let's say, freestyle Libre, we talked about no, it will be all countries, it will be all ages. We don't make those distinctions as we go along. And I think that's something we're learning and through the research. So that will happen over the course of time as to where we have got to and what we are trying to do. So, quick comment, because I've got a question waiting. Rude. Amy, can you counter that? Amy's in the audience. Amy, you've got to speak up a little bit. So her. Right. Okay.
I'm Tim Thornton. I was diagnosed 35 years ago. Since then, I've been trialling various things from Novo pens through to the early pumps. A comment was made earlier around that there's more to CGM than just CGM adoption than just funding, and I agree with that. But I think we could equally say that of pumps 10, 15 years ago, and we've managed to overcome that hurdle. I think it's about taking small steps and educating people in communities. There was a comment made earlier about the cost of stage 3 trials and how can we make better use of the growing body of evidence that we've got in the open source community, such as the data that's coming through from the 20-odd thousand families globally that are on Night Scout to reduce that burden?
That's a great question, and I don't think we've figured out the answer yet. I think people being willing to share their data, just as people being willing to take the hit of some of the inconvenience of participating in a clinical trial, are really important factors that will drive us going forward. One of the biggest cost factors actually in conducting clinical trials is how long it takes to get the numbers of people into the trial that you need. So in some of the cancer scenarios we were talking about before, there's a coordinated system and everyone gets invited to be part of a clinical trial. All those cancer centres are set up to be able to forward people into clinical trials. Whilst we have a diabetes research network here in the UK, in England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, they work slightly separately, it isn't that streamlined funnel through. So you may not have ever had a conversation with your clinical teams about research that you could participate in. They may never have asked you. There may not be studies running at the hospital that you attend. There might be though. It might just be that the clinician that you're seeing that day doesn't know about them or has forgotten to mention them in the small chunk of time that they have with you. So I would encourage everyone to think about clinical trials and whether you could get involved. And I think as we move forward into data sharing, there were some comments on Twitter earlier about who owns whose data and who gets access to whose data. Those are questions that I think we haven't worked out in the diabetes field. Certainly they're live questions at JDRF. We want to make as much use of all the data that's available to us as possible, provided it's given freely and people know what they're doing with it. But we haven't quite figured out what that means and what that looks like. And I don't think the regulators and the ethical bodies have either. So it's an ongoing conversation. And it's changing. So how you used to run a phase 3 clinical trial, even 15 years ago, was quite a lot of paperwork and quite a lot of form filling. There weren't trials that you could do where people were live uploading their data into the cloud and you could read it off live. So we almost haven't developed those systems as well as possible. Maybe Roman and Helen might have a different view on that to me.
I mean, I agree with that, but actually I do think the NHS is uniquely well placed. And like one of the reasons I live in cold, wet England and not in sunny New Zealand is because this is actually the best place in the world to do research.
There either.
There aren't many people. The lifestyle is lovely, but actually the NHS offers care that is free for all, but actually the best environment for doing clinical research in the world. But I think our systems for doing it within diabetes need to improve.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to make one comment before Tim sort of comes in, because one of the things you mentioned was about variability of care, right? So one of the pieces of work that's going to start from May is we're going to go to every single hospital in the country and find out about the care they provide for diabetes patients. Okay, so there'll be data which we'll collect, and the data will be made public. So for example, if you got admitted, what are the length of stay? Is it more different in hospitals? What are the errors there? What is the pump uptake? Those are the data which we hope will actually help us either reduce the variation or have the conversation, should everybody do type 1 diabetes technology? Should they? If you're not trained, if you don't know what you're doing, if you suddenly become a barrier because you don't know enough about the technology, and you're starting to say to people, actually, you shouldn't have a pump or a CGM simply because I don't know anything about it, but then give it to somebody who does, right? We do that with vascular care, we do that with stroke care in this country. Should we do that with type 1 diabetes technology? I don't know the answer to that. But does that feed into the research ethics? Very nicely. Because then you have hubs which actually generate the right research. That would be a piece of work we will put in a lot of people's Christmas lists. But we shall find out. It's time to find that bit of detail out. As a person living with type 1 diabetes, you need to know what your local hospital does, don't you? Why not? We would do that with a lot of things, and you should know that as well. So I think those sort of work is going to start from May and June. And we shall see how that takes us. I genuinely believe, and we're working with the charities on that as well, and I do believe that that will actually help drive research up, because if you've got motivated people doing this, they'll automatically move patients across to research as well, or at least be the advocates for it. Right, Tim.
Just to add to the comments about the use of Night Scout data and the fact that there are large numbers of people generating vast amounts of data that is all being stored on the cloud, it's something we're going to cover in this afternoon's presentations, talking about the various uses and applications of the technologies. But I think it's fair to say at this point that there are ongoing pieces of work amongst the community to look at how we can better use that and how we can potentially use that to provide information to the NHS to do things slightly differently.
I would echo that, and I would say that has to come from the patient community, because we are just doing a work on type 1 diabetes digital, have a digital platform, and we have interviewed a lot of patients. What's the biggest concern that people have? What are you going to do with my data? People trust Barclays more than the NHS. That's how it is at the moment. And so we need to get better, or we need to look at you to sort of help us out. That's where we are. So yeah, that sort of work would be very well. Questions then?
Question for the panel, particularly the charities. So you mentioned some of the difficulties around phase 3 trials and recruiting people into those trials. Are the trials that you run advertised on your website so that people could enroll, so rather than having to go through NHS bodies who you've already mentioned Apache, kind of, or your networks on Apache, can people direct enroll, for example?
Direct enrolment, no, but in terms of finding out about clinical trials, every trial that is registered with clinicaltrials.gov, you can find through the Clinical Trials Finder on the JDRF website. So yes, you can find out about information about trials you can join. It is a better tool than other tools that are out there, but it still has its problems. All the eligibility criteria and so on are not perfect. It's also not great at fine-tuning geography. So it may say that there's a trial you could join near you when you live in Devon and the trial is in London. So it's not exquisite, but it is there. It's a starter for 10. There are quite a few barriers involved in that. You need to be consented before you join a trial. You will need to have a conversation with one of the people who is running that clinical trial to make sure that you understand everything that's involved in the trial, and also have a cool-off period so that you get a very excited person who's excited about having you as part of your trial. They can't overly influence you to join a trial, so that you've got time to think about it. So there are steps in place which actually Roman and Helen could talk to far better than I
I just make a point that the reason to do a trial is only when you have genuine clinical equipoise. So if you are not sure if something works, so I think there's a whole other ethical discussion to be had. If we are so sure that tech works, then do we need trials? We do trials where we need to weigh up risk and benefit. We should not be doing trials where we think this is the answer before we've started.
It's a really quick question. I've just posted this on Twitter. I wondered whether it's the two charities. I'm sorry, you're guessing you're in the firing line. But I wondered if you'd looked at things like the website that's called Join Dementia Research, which is where people like us can register our interest so that actually case finding becomes much easier. So I would be able to tell you about myself online. I would volunteer that, and then you would be able to find us much more easily. And Join Dementia Research, as I understand it, is becoming the standard for this type of work.
I think that's a great point. I think we need to get a lot better at how, we talk about we haven't got enough people involved in research, and it's absolutely at the heart of what both the charities want, because unless we get more people involved in research, both selecting the research that we do but also engaged in it, it's not going to benefit you. So I think we absolutely need to think about how do we listen better, and how do people who want to get involved in research find those trials, find those studies that are actually easy to do, because at the moment, the interfaces are quite complicated for people. So yeah, we have a real role in that. That's a really good problem.
What's it called?
Join Dementia Research.
So what stops us from joining diabetes.research?
That's what I'm asking.
Well, let's do it then. We'll take this conversation outside. There's no reason not to. That's my sort of philosophy in life. If it works for one, it works for all. So let's have a look. We'll talk to the charities about it later on and the research network. There's no reason not to. In NHS England, we have the power in the cloud to make these things happen, or at least have the conversation. So, yeah, let's find out. We shall see what happens. Right, next question. I'm going to actually go some to the back, because one second, I'll come back to you, promise. Charlotte.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm type 1. I was diagnosed at the age of 3, and now I'm a professional wrestler as well. My question is a bit more about... like, it's fine, I'm used to it. Like, 200 people look at me. No. I think something we've neglected a bit in the conversation is around like psychological issues and the sort of distress that comes with technology. I love technology. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. Having been diagnosed at the age of 3, like how in the kind of lifespan of a child growing up as a child, adolescent, adult, and being connected with all this technology, having all the data thrown at you, alarms, numbers, everything. Have we thought a bit about how we train healthcare professionals and people with diabetes to deal with that? Is a big burden psychologically as an adult, let alone as a child?
There's a lot of nods in the room to that question. So, panel.
If I start, I think, Charlotte, that's so important. As you know, we talk a lot about how do we really understand the impact on people, and how do we improve technology. We improve technology that people can access, benefits their lives, and benefits quality of life. We need to understand much better the individual and their response to technology, and adapt technology to enable them to continue to use it the same way as we would with any other sort of treatment. So absolutely important, and something our clinical studies groups are actively talking about. The impact on people's mental health as well as physical health is critically important if we're going to make progress.
I agree, but I also feel that if people are finding something new, if they don't find it useful, they'll stop using it. Trust people to make the best choices and decisions in their own lives, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just be slightly devil's advocate to that. I think then we as healthcare professionals shouldn't turn around and say, why haven't you done all the reading that you should have done? I think that realization doesn't sometimes come, that people just want a break. So because somebody said a category that you need to do X number of readings, if you don't come to clinic, you won't be able to continue with X technology. So I think that as a healthcare professional body, not challenge to you, but we probably need to be more cognizant that sometimes people just want a break for all the numbers and the alarms. And it's not that they're not looking after their diabetes. I suspect that also happens a lot.
Of course, they have increasingly a range of products available, so they can choose from a device that doesn't give the annoyances. They can choose from, they can have the budget airline, they can have the gold stop first class. There's a whole range of options out there.
So I totally, it's about your individual in front of you and what they want to do. You know, I can offer kids, teenagers, all the technology that's available to me, but if they don't want to use it and wear that bit of kit, then that's their choice. You know, and I'm not there to force them to do it. I'm there to give the options of the menu of what's available, what I can do to help, and it's their choice after that. But what you're saying, the timeline during their life of what changes of what they want, it is, you see it from the young kids who come in and they don't have much of a voice because they're young kids, and it's the parents you're dealing. So my discussions with the parents and what they want, and that changes over time as they become teenagers, and some of them, and some of them embrace it. Some of them suddenly decide actually they don't want that text message going to mum telling them when they're hypo at 2 a.m. for some reason. Yeah.
Okay, we have.
Okay, this is kind of an observation on how the conversation has gone. We talked a bit about there being a two-tier NHS, about paediatric care and adult care. What we haven't heard anything about is people who have their diabetes care delivered through GPs and through primary care. And it feels like there could be a danger that we end up with almost a 3 or 4-tier NHS, where you have the people who really are interested in this stuff, probably the people who are sitting in this room. A portion of us here today get our diabetes care through a hospital. I suspect it's probably quite high, but that you have kind of the people who are already in good hospitals doing this well, who then take the steps to do things like funding CGM or building their own artificial pancreas on top of that, or get involved in research and have access to it. Then you have everybody else, and then you have the people who are going to see somebody at a GP surgery who probably actually isn't ever going to offer them access to any of that. And that would be very sad to think that in 20 years there will be even bigger disparities than there are today.
Okay, I'll take that. That's not quite a research question, it's more a policy. So I used to start off having a view that, you know what, every type 1 should be under a specialist, and quite rightly too. I've changed my views, because having been around the country, there are some fantastic GPs, and patients will vouch by them because they have been brilliant at giving them what they have asked for, supported them, and there have also been specialists who have not done any of that. So I don't think it's about the grade, I think it's about somebody who understands what type 1 diabetes is about and is well trained. And I'll give you one example for that. The first patient focus group I did, there was this 17-year-old girl who basically, I said, surely you all want to come and see me because I'm amazing. And when she looked at me from our mobile and said, I really don't care who sees me, as long as they know what they're doing and when I want to see them. That's it. So I think the tier system doesn't really matter. I think it's about having the education the skills and knowing when to refer on. Right? So if you're saying a technology needs to go X, so that is something which I agree we need to work on far better. Now, one of the speakers mentioned about the right care pathway, which it sounds all gibberish and HSP, but the purpose of that is to highlight to people what ideal type 1 diabetes care should be like. And it doesn't say just everybody should go to the specialist. It's about saying that you need to have the right skills and know when to refer on. An HbA1c in old money of 11% may be a bit high. You know, think of that sort of stuff. So I absolutely accept that, but that is a fundamental work we're doing as well. And it's also about not getting involved in the whole thing. We all do diabetes care and diabetes all the same. So give it some time, but yes, we're fully aware of that. Okay? We had something, Tim's going to go first, and I'll come back to you.
The other question is, if you are a member of this audience who is somebody who's very engaged in your diabetes care, potentially in the technology, have you offered to speak to your GP practice about what you do and about explain to them what this all means? Because you'd be surprised at the uptake that you'll get from that. I tried it with mine, and we're arranging an evening session where the nurses in the practice and all the GPs are going to turn up and listen to what it is we've got to talk about. So it's not just a case of expecting them to have all the information, it's about us educating our healthcare professionals in the things that we know about and the things that interest us.
Thank you, Tim. Last one, absolutely, Lucy, you're on.
I would just like to perhaps explain the earlier discussion about how some people don't want to necessarily have this amazing technology. I mean, personally, I think it's an amazing thing. However, I understand that some families don't, and I think it's because many people, and I'm sure we've all the diabetics in this room have all had moments where we really don't want to be diabetics because we've face many challenges, and I think many people feel that having this technology almost puts it right in your face, and obviously people don't necessarily want that. And I think as well as thinking about developing this technology, I think it'd be good to also look at the side of, actually, are we making this more on our face to make it psychologically harder as well?
So I tell you what, Lucy, you've teed me in. This was not set up. Because after lunch, this is why you're going to love Dana's talk, right? To see whether technology has to be always in your face or whether something else can be done with it, okay? So on that note, thank you very much for the question. Thank you to everybody. Shall we break for lunch? Come back at?
Yeah, thanks guys. You're more than welcome to bring lunch back in here. We're running over time by a long way, but I think that's only a good sign. So if you can be back in for past, that would be great.
past. And past. Yeah, definitely past.
On the dot.
On the dot, past. With your lunch.
No, I'm listening. Let me just. It's playing us live, so let me just stop the streaming.